100,000 came to party at the Formula One Grand Prix of Canada. But on lap 2, Villeneuve speared the trackside wall, ending his race before it had begun. In the end, Michael Schumacher survived blistered tires to win his second race of the year, sweeping past Villeneuve into the lead in the World Driving Championship. This weekend, the scene shifts to France. Again, Villeneuve has crashed en route to his poorest qualifying performance in the year, while Schumacher has raced to his second straight pole position. Today, the fans in France will witness the newest battle between Villeneuve and Schumacher in Magny-Cours.
Well, that's right, Bob, and you know the fans coming in here to Magny-Cours could be in for a real treat. With Jacques Villeneuve with his tail up and Williams going for their 100th Grand Prix win, everybody's praying for rain, because if it does rain, then the rest of the teams will have a chance. It's all right at the moment, but who knows, that could change very quickly.
Indeed, it could change. Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Varsha. Welcome to Round 8 of the Formula One World Driving Championship at the Circuit Magny-Cours, the Grand Prix of France. Weather has been our story thus far all weekend. It was damp on Friday, dry Saturday for qualifying, but wet again this morning in the warm-up. Here are our weather conditions at post time. The temperature 68 degrees and rising, the chance of rain rising with it. As you can see, there is blue sky overhead, but we had raindrops just moments ago as the field prepared to come to the grid. With me as ever, Derek Bell. We have 4 new faces in new places with lots in common.
Who could possibly argue that karting isn't the best training ground for aspiring Formula One stars? All 4 have graduated through karting, Formula Ford to Formula 3 on their way to Formula One. Alexander Wirtz, 23-year-old from Austria. He won Le Mans in 1996, the youngest driver ever to do so, and he had a great drive in Canada just 2 weeks ago. Jarno Trulli, 22-year-old from Italy. He's driven for Minardi this year, but really has come out of the box, done a great job so far. Norberto Fontana, 22-year-old from Argentina. This is his first Grand Prix, and of course everybody's going to be watching just to see how he gets on. Finally, Tazo Marquez, 21-year-old from Brazil. He did 2 races in 1996. He has his great opportunity today as well. But truly, Polly was the star of qualifying yesterday with 6th place. Jonathan Green talked to him.
I am a young driver, and the most important thing for me is learn. So I don't want to say I must be in the front. I want to say I must learn. I want to learn. And then we should see the result. Before, you must learn everything about Formula One, because it's not easy. I have no experience about Formula races, because I've done only 1.5 years in Formula 3 and stepping up straight ahead Formula One. And now I'm in a top team, so I must be very professional. I need to learn my job. I need to learn the car. I need to learn to be in the front.
Jarno, you must be very proud. Alain Prost complimented you as soon as you got out of the car. He's one of the greatest drivers of all time. Your first time out in the car, that must have made you very proud.
I am very proud, even if Prost didn't say that, because I was proud to be here in this team. I must thank him, but I must also admit that I failed the last lap. That's not nice. I must learn to not fall and things. And then it will be much better for the future.
Well, maybe the most remarkable thing about he and Jarno Trulli is the facial resemblance he bears to the late triple world champion, Ayrton Senna. There is the man himself, Jarno Trulli, who has definitely stepped up with competitive equipment. And Schumacher, with that win in Canada, 7 points ahead of Jacques Villeneuve. Olivier Panis, injured in Canada, will not race today. 3 Germans atop the grid, and Michael Schumacher was thrilled.
Obviously, I was watching the beginning, both 3 Germans in the first 3, and I was wondering how long it's going to last. I was expecting people to drive faster than I did, and obviously then as well Ralph. But it was great. I mean, now we're sitting here first time together, and I spoke to him this morning. He was very upset because his car wasn't really working good enough to produce lap times, and now he's sitting next to me, so obviously we're both happy.
Real corner, the very first time to lead you down that back straight towards Adelaide. They're pulling over 190 miles an hour as we go down towards Adelaide turn, and it's a very, very good opportunity to overtake, as you can see from this shot here. Great for overtaking, the only place really on the circuit that's safe. Again, vital to get traction coming out, not too much sideways, as they lead themselves down towards the 180 right-hand corner, into a left-hand corner, and then up to a little squiggle. Just shows you that the car absolutely online as you work your way up through here. Then from there on, they go down to Orchard. downforce. Out of Imola takes you all the way down to Chateau d'Eau, and then of course down the chicane. Here's Michael Schumacher having a mighty time. Keep off those curbs in the chicane. And then that leads them into the Lycée, which is the corner, takes them on the straight. Michael's struggling here to get the car into the corner to get a good time. Lycée vital to get out onto the straight. Let's go down to Gary Anderson, who has track set up this week.
One of the biggest problems is through turn 2. It's a very long right-hand corner and it leads onto the main straight. So there you've got to be very careful because you're going to have a bit of understeer through that, which really ruins the front tyre on you. And it means you're slow onto the straight, so you get passed down at the hairpin at the end. One of the things that we're working on at the moment is to try to make the car good through there, keep a good balance. Normally that's the key to a successful race. And we've got a new differential we're running this race meeting for the first time, which is to help that situation. The driver can adjust the differential from the car. So I hope we can get there and end up on the podium. It looks okay at the moment. That's the plan.
That is the plan indeed. Let's take a look at the starting grid now for today's race. On pole for the 16th time, Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. He'll start alongside Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Williams, 2nd and 8th quick in the morning warm-up. Row 2, Ralf Schumacher, his best qualifying performance for the Jordan team. He'll be next to Jacques Villeneuve, his worst for Williams this year, 6th and 7th in the warm-up. Row 3, Eddie Irvine, the surprise quickest man in the warm-up in the Ferrari, and Jarno Trulli in the Prost Mugen Honda, just 15th in the warm-up. On row 4, the Benetton teammates, Alex Wirtz sitting in for Gerhard Berger, and Jean Alesi coming off 2 straight podiums. On row 5, the McLaren teammates, David Coulthard and Mika Hakkinen, with what may be the most powerful engine in the sport from Mercedes. On row 6, Giancarlo Fisichella in the Jordan, and Shinji Nakano of Japan, his best qualifying performance on his home track. On row 7, Rubens Barrichello in the Stewart, and Johnny Herbert, who just turned 33. On row 8, Jan Magnussen in the 2nd Stewart Ford, and Pedro Diniz in the Arrows, who out-qualified his teammate, the man who'll start inside row 9, the world champion Damon Hill, still looking for his first points of the year. He'll be next to Jos Verstappen, who lost an engine in qualifying in his Tyrrell, but still out-qualified his teammate, who'll be on row 10, Mika Salo in the Tyrrell, next to Norberto Fontana, the first Argentine driver in Formula One since Oscar Larori back in 1988. On the last row, Ukio Katayama in the Minardi, who hit the pit wall in the warm-up and broke his suspension, but they've got it fixed. He'll start next to his teammate Tarso Marquez, his 3rd Grand Prix start, all of them with the Minardi team. We'll be back with more from France. The green light now just moments away. 7th home in 46 runnings of the Grand Prix of France. Bob Barsh and Derek Bell with you. The grid is being cleared right now in bright sunshine, but there are heavy clouds overhead. The entire field at this moment is on slicks. Everyone using soft compounds, either Bridgestone or Goodyear, with the exception of the Jordan and Ferrari teams, which we understand are on hard compound tires, perhaps looking at a one-stop strategy for today's race. There's a look at the circuit and the various sector times. 2.64 miles around, 72 laps of racing scheduled as they dip down into the first 2 turns, including that long right-hander, the Estoril corner.
That is a corner, in fact, Bob, that the Ferrari was not quick around at all, and Schumacher reckons he's losing like 0.3 of a second going round there, but of course he made it up on the rest of the circuit. So he's somehow got to keep ahead, get a good run round there, and get down that long straight, 190-mile-an-hour straight into Adelaide.
Look at some of the onboard cameras to be used in today's race, and you got to look at some of the very dark clouds right there in the lower left picture.
Or even the upper right. It's amazing. There's a lot of rain about. Let's just hope it keeps up on those Alps and doesn't come down onto the circuit.
See Ralf Schumacher going by. His teammate Giancarlo Fisichella lost an engine coming to the start grid. He had to leap into the garage. The backup car was already set up for him, but they had to whip it together and get it out there on the grid so the young Italian could take the green light.
He hasn't had too good a run actually during this weekend, Fisichella, but of course he always does a good job in the race. But for the first time they're running a slightly modified Mugen Honda engine. In fact, I shouldn't say that, they're running Peugeot engines. I was going to talk about the Mugen Honda engines. The Mugen Honda team, the Prost team, are actually running a B-spec engine which has a wider rev band and 20 to 30 more horsepower. So we can be interested to see just how Jarno Trulli gets along with this new engine and new car.
France has a proud history in Grand Prix racing. Home of the first Grand Épreuve, or Grand Prize race in 1906, won by Hungarian Ferenc Zis in a Renault. It took 73 years before Renault won its second French Grand Prix at Dijon, where Jean-Pierre Jabouille won the first race for a turbocharged car. But the race was probably better known for the wheel-banging battle between the late Gilles Villeneuve and René Arnoux, a battle won by Villeneuve that has gone into Formula One legend. Under cloudy skies here at Manicourt, the field comes set, the revs will come up, and we will be away at round 8 of the Formula One World Driving Championship. Turn up the volume and enjoy. Michael Schumacher. Jacques Villeneuve slots into second, but he's being challenged as they turn into one.
Villeneuve, I noticed that, Irvine popped into third place there. Had a great start. He had the run because Villeneuve swung across behind his teammate, and already Damon is off the road. I don't believe it.
And he's broken the front wing supports. The world champion will apparently score no points here today, although we haven't seen if he got out of that gravel trap. Meanwhile, up at the point, Michael Schumacher leads Jacques Villeneuve, Eddie Irvine.
Villeneuve having a go there.
And Ralf Schumacher in the bright yellow Jordan was challenged for third place, and I think passed, although he is still wheel to wheel right there with Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Excuse me, Villeneuve in fourth. Frentzen runs second. I'm just so used to seeing Jacques on the front row. I got completely
Yes, he didn't get such a good start as we thought. He tried to dive across and get behind Frentzen. Of course, let it out for Eddie Irvine. This is exactly what Schumacher needs. He needs to get through these corners immaculately so that, of course, he can make that break before he hits that back straightaway. He's not getting that far away at the moment, but of course, as we said just now, we're not sure about fuel loads and just how they're running this. Irvine's right there, and you can see Ralf Schumacher having a look down the inside of Villeneuve. Villeneuve's got a major problem on his hand, trying to keep the interests of Schumacher at bay. Ralf Schumacher, that is.
There's a look at Heinz-Harald Frentzen. You notice those question marks on the side pods. This is a no tobacco race. France kicks off a series of 3 races in which tobacco advertising is not allowed in the home countries, France, Britain, and Germany. But those question marks have been seized upon by the British press, wondering in this morning's editions why the Williams-Renault team has not been more dominant. Everyone, including that man, Michael Schumacher, said this is a Williams racetrack. You couldn't have designed it any better for the Williams team, and yet only second and fourth in qualifying behind the magnificent Michael.
We saw some great qualifying yesterday. Michael actually set his time very early on in the session, and he tried again and again to go out and get a better time, but in fact had some pretty lurid moments, and we saw a shot of that in the warm-up just now. We saw it. So Damon Hill's in the pits, changing the nose on the car, and obviously changed the tyres at the same time because he took to the kitty litter, and no doubt didn't do the tyres any good because he probably locked it all up going in there. He's having a torrid time. Doesn't know which way they're going at the team at the moment. Actually qualified lower than his teammate, Pedro Diniz. Schumacher's easing away little by little from Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and of course he's got all the attentions of Eddie Irvine behind, and behind him, of course, Villeneuve there, pulling away a little bit from the Jordan of Ralf Schumacher.
Eddie Irvine could use a good race here in France. Ferrari has an option on his services for 1998 that is up at the end of July. He'd very much like to nail that down soon. We'll be back.
Your car doesn't look.
France through the very tight and slow Adelaide hairpin. Jacques Villeneuve runs fourth in the Grand Prix of France. Behind, as you see, Michael Schumacher, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and Eddie Irvine. Ralf Schumacher fourth. David Coulthard up from 9th to 5th. Excuse me, 6th.
The old eyes aren't doing you very well this morning.
Oh dear. You want to just take over, Derek?
Oh, there we are. I wanted to see where Wirtz was. He's actually dropped back from his 6th place, and he's back in 10th place. But I was quite interested to see just how he's getting on. He's got to settle in. It's his first race at the front. He's had a major time this year at the back of the field, of course, in the Minardi, and there he is up front. So he's got to settle in a bit. The pace is much faster than he's used to.
One of the interesting things about this racetrack, despite the fact that it is very, very smooth, it's also very sensitive to the weather conditions. Even as the clouds come over, the track cools very quickly. Makes things even more challenging for the drivers and their setups.
It doesn't seem that we're going to have a problem with tyres this race because it's a very, very smooth surface. This is the early part of the race. You see Damon disappearing off the track at the back there. He obviously got tangled up with somebody at the back, and he made him deflect somewhat. He didn't really, I don't think, damage the nose that much until he got onto the kitty litter, and he damaged it as he bounced across it. Schumacher really giving it heat. He pulled out 2.8 seconds in the first 3 laps. I mean, he's really going for it. But he's just set the fastest lap of the race, which is inevitable, I guess, at this stage. But of course, we just don't know what these strategies are. Maybe if he can really look at him go through that sequence of corners. Nothing like seeing Schumacher at full flight out front.
Michael Schumacher has been saying all weekend, we can't possibly win here. In fact, in the post-qualifying press conference for the top 3 qualifiers, Schumacher, Frentzen, and Michael's brother Ralph, Frentzen was asked about the Williams team's chances, and he said, well, Michael keeps saying he's going to struggle in the race, and he wins, so maybe I'll just say that too. We're going to struggle at Williams. And then Ralph Schumacher got up and said, well, yes, we're going to struggle too, because I want a piece of that kind of luck, if that's what it is.
Macy all over the back of Trulli. What a great job this young man, Jarno Trulli's done. I mean, the first time he got into a car of this performance, he said it was just like driving a Formula 3 car, which may not have pleased the team very much at Prost, but what he meant was, I'm sure, oh, look, one of the Minardis has expired finally, or finally already, should I say, but we looked at it at the back of the grid. That's not very good for poor old Tasso Marquez and in his sort of reinstatement at Minardi. I haven't seen many of their engines go out this season. But I think the reason, oh, look, a little fire at the back. Perhaps one of the, oh, he got it last time. He saw the flames, he's going to pop it out. Oh, not a very good start for him. One of our 4 young boys back on the grid, out of the race. Going back to Jarno Trulli, I'm sorry, I just must say, I think the fact that he said it was just like his Formula 3 car, he meant that it really handled extremely well and is a lovely, nice, neat little car to drive after his Minardi experiences earlier this year.
You watch Michael Schumacher, who now has a huge lead over Heinz-Harald Frentzen, nearly 5 seconds. Following up on Jarno Trulli, his previous qualifying performances in the Minardi, 17th, 17th, 18th, 20th, 18th, 18th, and 20th. He gets into the Prost Mugen Honda, and he is instantly 6th on the grid.
Damon Hill is back out on the track again. But of course he's in last place, having had that excursion early on, presumably trying to avoid a melee in the first couple of corners of the track. Schumacher 5 seconds after about 5 or 6 laps. He just loves to get out there and show his dominance and upset the people behind, almost like his comments when he says, oh, I don't think we can do too well. You know, we'll just see how it goes. Don't expect to perform very well at Manicourt or in Britain. And there they are with their latest spec engine out there, going extremely well indeed. They've been wanting to run this engine, but it's obviously becoming more and more reliable. It has more middle range power. And obviously we saw that from qualifying. It does have the pace. Ferrari always have to run more downforce to get the performance out of the car, which means they have a little bit more drag on the straightaway and therefore a little bit slower. So, and of course, you've seen how Schumacher whips around the corners. That just shows you the gap between Schumacher and Frentzen at this time. And Villeneuve's not making any impression at all on Eddie Irvine either.
Swinging across the start-finish straightaway, the lineup for the very quick left-hander. Part of the racetrack through a right-hand kink known as the golf corner, and then from nearly 200 miles an hour all the way down to about 40 for this corner, the Adelaide hairpin.
I think what we must try and understand here is it always looks so smooth when you watch these guys driving around the corners, but the critical factor is the speed with which they get into the corners. We can all get on the power coming out. Is that the way that you actually get on the power very early on? You actually get into the corner fast. That's why they do a lot of this left foot braking, and they get in very fast. And this is where, of course, once they're committed, they cannot get out of it. If they get into trouble midway through the corner, they actually have nowhere to go except for to fly off the road, and that's why we see a lot of incidents. The cars are not at all easy to drive. I was talking to Eddie Irvine just the other day, and he just said how difficult they are to drive, and he got in and drove an earlier Ferrari that had been raced about 5 years ago, the turbo car, and he said he couldn't believe how beautiful and easy and beautiful torque it was to drive.
On board one of the Benettons, a quick look from the driver's eye view. Whoops, one of the Prosts is out. Shinji Nakano, future son-in-law for Hirotoshi Honda, who runs the Mugen Honda engine building concern.
Whoa, look, he eludes it, of course, catches that bit of oil out there, locks them all up into the kiddie litter. Look at it. Whoa, he's still trying to keep it together. He goes across another bit of track, but he's not about to drive anymore today. That's just...
So Nakano's races run. Prost team can only wonder what might have been. We'll be back with more live from France. Live at the Grand Prix of France, round 8 of the Formula One World Championship for 1997. Bob Varsha, Derek Bell, glad to have you with us as you look at Heinz-Harald Frentzen running second and continuing to drop back from race leader Michael Schumacher, who has simply checked out in his Ferrari.
Just amazing to see the way he just pulls away, that head-down attitude, just going away and demoralizing the rest of the pack. And it merely must be demoralizing Jacques Villeneuve, who's not had a good weekend at all. It was a terrible time in qualifying. He crashed yesterday morning in warm-up before qualifying, and of course that set them back. Again, it was an error. One can't help but say that it was an error, but they're always on such a limit. Of course, that put him behind. He couldn't get his testing, his spare car up to speed. He then gets back in his race car in qualifying, can't get that to run properly either. So consequently, he ends up in 4th place. Well, I would have said in insurmountable position, but even this morning in warm-up, they were playing it again with the car, and I think he's certainly feeling the pressure of Schumacher that Schumacher is putting on him. He's 7 points behind Schumacher, and Schumacher has dominated the whole weekend. Long way to go yet, but we'll have to see how it pans out. It's a great shot from Inalesi's car as he follows Jarno Trulli. Super shot. It's really great to see this shot and see just the line these guys get into the corner. Behind Alesi is Alexander Wirtz, who no doubt would love to get by his teammate, but isn't about to take him off, we hope. Wirtz, in fact, out-qualified Alesi by 0.3 of a second. And, of course, Alesi got a better start. You can imagine Alesi's morale was down pretty well yesterday. But Wirtz is right there behind him, and Alesi can see him all over his mirrors.
8th, 9th, and 10th in the race. Gap from Hakkinen to Trulli, who leads this train of 3 cars. More black clouds on the horizon. That Estoril corner is absolute magic. You have to feather the throttle. It is not a flat-out corner, but you have to get through it quickly.
But he just leads onto this straightaway down to the Adelaide hairpin. Absolutely vital to get out of it as smoothly and as fast as you possibly can.
Driving the Benetton Renault, a home race for the French Renault factory, as it is for the Peugeot-powered cars of the Jordan Peugeot team. Of course, a home race for the Prost Mugen Honda effort, which is based here at Manicourt.
The other way, Alesi is just trying to get on the power. He's just flipping it, trying to get a bit of power, get a bit of traction. Because these cars, I mean, they're 750 horsepower. They only weigh 1,320 pounds, admittedly, when they're dry, 1,700 odd when they're full of fuel and, of course, of driver. But they just have to balance the car out as they're going through the corner. They daren't get on it full. They just spin the wheels, and you can see that when they get out of shape, they do slide all over the road, but they just cannot get that traction. Very, very high curves as they go through the chicane and out of the Lycée corner out onto the pit straight.
As the track warms up, it will get more slippery. It'll be harder on the tires to gain traction. That's Jasper Stappen on the right. This is down to the Adelaide hairpin.
Oh dear, knocked my nose off. Oh, that is not good at all.
Pedro Diniz losing the nose on the right rear. So front wings the problem for Tom Walkinshaw's Arrows Yamaha team this weekend. Damon Hill had to replace his on lap 1. He runs at the tail of the pack.
Yes, I'd like to see that shot again, just to see just actually what happened there, whether Diniz was totally in the wrong or whether he was well in there. Pit stop, you can see Diniz coming in, no doubt. They're preparing there. They're preparing for a stop as well. They don't know that their car wasn't involved in that incident.
Well, as I was mentioning, as the track heats up and the tires have to work harder, there is always the danger of blisters. The last 2 races in Barcelona and in Montreal, tires have featured as Goodyear and Bridgestone battle for performance. That means softer compounds, and that raises the potential for blisters. Here's Denise making his way back to the pits.
He's at least he brought the wing with him. At least they can use part of it again. Not much of it, no doubt. Very nice, good driver that. Nothing for souvenir hunters there. Looks like he might have got some crud underneath the car. Perhaps he went a little bit wide, got on a lot of dirt. He's off on fresh tires in a great hurry. Now he'll be well behind Damon. Absolute sticker tires. Meanwhile, Schumacher, look at him. He's really gutting it through those corners. It is great to watch somebody absolutely at full tilt.
The comparison is amazing. You see Michael at full flight. You see that line of Speedy Dry to the driver's right. That was from Giancarlo Fisichella's Peugeot engine meltdown as he tried to make his way to the starting grid.
I just wonder what sort of race it would have been if we'd seen Ayrton Senna out there at the same time as Schumacher in these races. It would have been the most battle of the titans, without a doubt.
Gaps continue to grow larger between the front-running cars. Jacques Villeneuve now almost 20 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, whom he trails by 7 points for the World Championship.
That's a full pit stop, really, Bob, isn't it?
This great battle. Ralf Schumacher, David Coulthard, and Mika Hakkinen. Jordan and the 2 McLarens.
Of course, this is where they should be getting on it, because the McLarens have got to get really close to Ralf as they go down this back straightaway, down towards the Adelaide hairpin, and this is where they need to be slipstreaming him and nipping behind the braking, but they just don't seem to be able to get close enough. The power of that Peugeot engine is absolutely undeniable. Oh, look at the... Whoops. He pushed that out a bit. He didn't get in there as well as he wanted. Lost some time, and you can see Hakkinen's all over the back of Coulthard now. Sorry, I was going to say Hakkinen really needs a good result here. He's had some pretty dismal results this season. He's been all the time qualifying every session almost without fail. He's been behind David Coulthard, and there's even talk of him going to Williams. I can't believe that Williams would take him. If he's not as quick as Coulthard, and they pushed Coulthard out with Hill last year, I can't believe they'll take Hakkinen above Coulthard. But then there's so many rumours at this time of the year, one doesn't know. You probably stop by to have a cup of coffee or something, and the rumours start.
Keep in mind, Ralf Schumacher is still in his first year of Formula One. Coulthard and Hakkinen, much more experienced. Ferrari crew looking rather smug. Why not? They have the $30 million man, Michael Schumacher, in their Ferrari. He is out front. We'll be back. Overhead at the Magny-Cours circuit, you see Jos Verstappen's Tyrrell Ford nosed heavily into the tire wall. Verstappen is out of the race, shaking his head as he walks in.
It was like he was implying his foot was hard on the brakes and the car didn't stop. And no doubt we'll see a shot of it in a moment. It's strange, we saw that incident earlier when, or should I say from yesterday, when Villeneuve went off in the warm-up in the morning. He didn't seem to slow down at all when he went across that sand trap, and it makes me wonder just how efficient that is. He didn't seem to slow. He had all his brakes locked up, and he just didn't slow. He didn't seem to dig in at all. There was no showers of gravel, and I think sometimes this happens when it's wet. It gets packed down, and there's been quite a bit of rain here over the last few days, and they need to sort of cultivate it up, you know, agitate it so that it is better for stopping.
Watch Heinz-Harald Frentzen running in second place. Comparison of the last lap and the best lap for he and race leader Michael Schumacher. Really Schumacher the quicker. We notice at a lot of racetracks around the world, they will, as you say, cultivate it. They will build the gravel traps into ridges, giving it a corduroy effect. These are absolutely smooth.
Yeah. And of course they get this moisture, the damp, the rain, and of course it becomes just like another bit of racetrack, in fact. And you could see Verstappen's marks in the shingle as he went through. And he actually sort of kept digging in as it sort of landed and dug in and then took off and landed again.
And a quick look at the Williams crew. I would guess it is Frenson's because Frentzen wears his sideburns at just that Elvis Presley length.
Yeah, I just noticed everybody has it there, Bob, so that must be Frenson's crew.
And that must mean that Jacques Villeneuve's crew has also bleached their hair absolutely white because that's what Villeneuve has done this weekend.
Yeah, they called him Lemon Top in the press in Britain yesterday.
running ahead of his Stewart Ford teammate Rubens Barrichello in 13th and 14th.
At least they're running a bit longer this time, although they did have a good result the other day as far as length was concerned. But they need to get some length races to get the feedback in the Stewart team.
In Friday's wet first session, Rubens Barrichello wound up fastest on Bridgestone's wet weather rubber. Damon Hill the second quickest. That was a first for Jackie Stewart's rookie team. The first time they had ever topped a time chart on a race weekend.
Pulling away. Irvine pulling. Oh, on the Mercedes, slowing right down. Pulling off at the hairpin. So that's the new Mercedes engine. Oil pouring out of the tail of it, which could have made it a bit exciting for some of the guys coming up under braking right now.
Well, perhaps we should have expected that. In testing last week, the McLaren team lost 5 Mercedes engines in 2 days of running. Or not running, as the case may be. Salo about to be taken down by Michael Schumacher, who was absolutely blinding in the opening laps of this race. It remains to be seen whether he's trying to build up a big gap for a 2-stop strategy. Might well be able to go the distance on 1 stop, which would make this early pace even more amazing.
Well, Villeneuve's certainly not living with Eddie Irvine either, so I thought Villeneuve might have got something out of the bag to be able to stay with Eddie and start to work his way through, or certainly capitalize on it at pit stops. But he's not able to stay with Eddie Irvine, and Eddie is dropping back too. So there's quite a job on there for Jacques Villeneuve, and one will never probably really know why it is. But I think it's when you get behind at these meetings, as he has done with basically because of the rain, and then of course he's off yesterday morning. Once you get behind, you never really get back on top of the job.
Ferrari leads the Constructors' Championship by virtue of Schumacher leading the Drivers' Championship in a large part.
Look at him catching up that Tyrrell as they go through there, whistling up on him. And I thought the Tyrrell had a lot of good handling. And of course that's through the Estoril curve, and then now working their way down towards the Adelaide hairpin.
Tyrrell using Ford's latest V8 customer engine, the ED5, just blown away by Michael Schumacher in the V10 Ferrari. Could be a poignant moment. Salo is the man on everybody's lips when it comes to Ferrari's driving future. He has talked with the team. Rumor has it he may replace Eddie Irvine next year at Ferrari. For his part, Michael Schumacher says, I like the team just the way it is.
Well, he gets a tremendous amount of respect from Eddie. Eddie said last week, he said, the guy's absolutely awesome, isn't he? He goes out, and it's great to have a teammate like that. It probably doesn't reflect very well on Eddie's competitiveness, but Eddie is a man of honest words, and he says what he thinks, and if he thinks that Schumacher is awesome, then he says so. And he knows he's very quick himself, but he said the guy is awesome. Look at that, truly understeering a bit there, not quite getting the turning he'd like to have done. And of course, you lose time there, and naturally the guys behind, the lazy behind, can just make up a few hundredths of a second, which is what he needs. And you see the guy in front just coming back into your grasp, you think, gotta have a go.
Eddie Irvine's exact words, Michael Schumacher is worth every penny, $30 million worth. We'll be back. Stop. Evidently, the 2-time world champion is on a 3-stop strategy, coming in on lap number 22 of 72.
Whoa, look at him go out.
See coming back out of the racetrack behind his teammate Eddie Irvine, so Schumacher in and out, back into the race in 3rd place and still ahead of Jacques Villeneuve. Heinz-Harald Frentzen back to live action. Frentzen making his first stop.
This really is a surprise. I never thought they'd be pitting. I thought they'd go longer on these cars. But
Well, good thing Frentzen didn't stall the engine just there. They had to hold him up while Eddie Irvine made his first stop. Good work by the crew to keep him out of harm's way.
And he comes out behind Villeneuve. Do you see that? Just because of that bad bit, he came out behind Villeneuve. And Irvine comes out behind them both. There's that was Fisichella going through.
I believe it was Fisichella, yeah. David Coulthard stopping in the McLaren pits.
Actually, That was very probably Ralph Schumacher, because Coulthard's come in, left Schumacher out there on his own, because we've seen 3 of them before. Hakkinen's out. Here he goes. Look. Oh dear, look, he comes straight out. That now, I presume he's behind Fisichella now.
Mika Hakkinen, his teammate, Derek, is out of the race. We saw him pull off, trailing Fluid down in the Adelaide hairpin. As you watch Michael Schumacher.
Well, there's a very good reason that all those cars have gone in for fresh rubber. Presumably, Goodyear have come up with some new rubber, obviously totally, well, not totally different, but different to the last race in Canada when they had terrible blistering problems. But obviously, they are short-term tyres, and they have to get the most out of them, come in and get those other tyres on, fresh tyres.
If, as we were told, Ferrari started on the harder compound, I'm still trying to work through Schumacher's strategy. He must be on a 2-stop.
Well, he must be at this time, but we do know, of course, that Ferrari do use more rubber because they run more downforce, and therefore they sort of chew them up more in the corners. And we found all the time that they just have to use a much harder rubber than anybody else.
Alex Wirtz, that wildly decorated helmet, dominated by the red and white of the Austrian flag.
You can see how he goes out in relation to Jean Alesi, because he was right on the tail of Jean Alesi before, and he would dearly love to get out in front. Yes, he's going to get out just in front of Jean Alesi. I think, looked like Alesi just behind, which is just what he wanted. Now it'd be interesting to see if he can gradually pull away from Alesi, if that's what he wants to do. Yeah, Alesi, I think he's back there.
One of the lapped Arrows cars.
And that, of course, held up Alesi during that lap, one assumes, after his pit stop. Gave Wirtz the opportunity to come out and be ahead. And just what Alexander Wirtz wanted, and Alesi certainly didn't.
Now that was an amazing comparison right there of speed between Michael Schumacher and this man, Jacques Villeneuve, making his first stop. Schumacher is the master of the quick lap as soon as you exit the pits, putting maximum pressure on his opponents to get good pit stops. There's a lot of dust in the pit lane. Someone may have spread some speedy dry.
I think it was after the Fisichella's car came in earlier, puking out all that oil. There haven't been many cars in the pit road since then, have there?
Surprised they didn't sweep it up better. Ralph Schumacher exits the pits.
Just ahead of his teammate, Fisichella.
Aerodynamic adjustments to Villeneuve's car during the pit stop, we're hearing. They took the gurney flap or wicker bill off the top of the rear wing, take a little downforce out of the back of the car, see if they can get a little more straight line speed.
Yes, the last thing they need down here, of course, is understeer too, and that would create understeer, and it's a heck of a lot of drag it puts on the car, having that little wicker bill start up on the top. So they would obviously, his fact was he probably wasn't getting round the Estoril curve that well, and if you get pushed going through there, you are in heaps of trouble.
Rubens Barrichello exits the Stewart pits. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher, with 26 laps complete, has nearly 15 seconds on Heinz-Harald Frentzen of the Williams-Renault. Eddie Irvine back in 3rd position. Jacques Villeneuve, 34 seconds plus, back up the road. Jarno Trulli continuing to have a good race. Named for the great motorcycle racer Jarno Saarinen, who died in the late 70s at Monza in one of the blackest days in motorcycle Grand Prix history. We'll be back with more from France live.
Hello, people.
Or as it's known to many of the teams, Manny Bohr. There's not an awful lot to do here at the end of the day. A track born of political patronage under the former socialist government of Francois Mitterrand, who came from this region called Nevers for a local town. And now that Mitterrand's government is gone, the French Grand Prix may be on the move in the near future. Perhaps back to Paul Ricard, one of the previous 6 places. Mika Hakkinen, having lost the engine in his McLaren Mercedes, talks to a crewman. Michael Schumacher on point. Another typically dominating drive by the 2-time world champion. Eddie Irvine running in third place. Ferrari suddenly looking dominant after all the years of chaos and missed opportunities. They lead the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship, which they have not won since 1979 when Jody Scheckter took it. Right now, they're looking formidable on a track that everyone said would favor the Williams-Renault cars.
No, Schumacher said it would favor the Williams cars.
Well, that's true. There is a difference, huh?
Poor old Mika, he just needed a good result. He's having not a good year at all.
Declining an interview? How odd for a Formula One driver.
He's probably not in the frame of mind to be interviewed right now. He has to think a lot about his answers because his English isn't that perfect. And I don't think you need to have to think when you're trying to go back to the team, having had a poor race and a disappointing one at that, when you really need some results before you find yourself on the discard pile.
Well, you raise a good point. I wouldn't be surprised if his team manager, Ron Dennis, put him under orders. As you look at Jean Todt, who heads the Ferrari Equipe, I'm sure Dennis told him, when you're out of the race, come talk to us first before you stop for the journalists. There you see the story. Michael Schumacher, visibly quicker than everyone else, as he has been from the green light.
Look how tight his line is round that corner. He's right on that lovely smooth curve. Not all the curves are that smooth, of course, but he's right on that very, very smooth curve.
Giancarlo Fisichella heading up David Coulthard. 7th and 8th.
Those Jordans, they just do have some power. And we saw that with Schumacher earlier when he was heading Coulthard. Coulthard must have had a slow old pit stop because he was right behind Ralf Schumacher before. At least I thought he was. There you are. Whatever it was, you'd expect that the McLarens would be much more visible today. The power of their engines, they supposedly do have the most powerful engine there. You think they'd be all over everybody.
Both men were a story 2 weeks ago on the Ile Notre Dame in Montreal. Fisichella picked up his first Formula One podium finish in third place. A race dominated by David Coulthard on a track where everyone else was chewing up tires. Coulthard managed his good years perfectly, had a one-stop strategy, everything going his way until he made that one stop where the clutch let him down. He could not get it out of gear as you watch Jarno Trulli headed for the Prost pits. There was the man himself, Alain Prost. Of course, when Coulthard came back out, he was in 7th place. And at that point, Olivier Panis had crashed his Prost and the race was red flag.
The strange thing was, it was the clutch on his steering column. And he actually has the clutch and a paddle on either side underneath. And this enables them, when they get the car in opposite lock, they can always push the clutch in with one finger or another if they have a problem. And in fact, it was the clutch paddle on one side wasn't operating properly. If he'd used the clutch the other side, he'd have got out of the pits absolutely fine. But of course, he wasn't to know that. Because once they're in the race, they do not use the clutch. They just use the sequential box. They just keep pressing the button.
But for a nail, a horseshoe was lost, and so on. Jan Magnussen pitting while you watch this action. There is the young Dane, only Danish driver in Formula One, and he has struggled in the most almighty way to come to terms with Formula One. After one brilliant drive, sitting in for Mika Hakkinen with the McLaren team at the old Pacific Grand Prix in Aida, Japan, Jackie Stewart tabbed Magnussen, whom he considers to be the greatest Formula 3 driver he has ever seen. Coming from Jackie Stewart, that says something. And yet Magnussen has struggled to come to terms with Formula One. Look at the rubber buildup offline.
Yes, you certainly don't want to be offline today. Well, this is a track that's used for a lot of testing, as you said earlier, Bob. So, of course, the teams know the hidden... Look at those lumps there. That is lumps of rubber. It's not lumps literally out of the tire, everybody. It actually is lumps of rubber that build up around the wheel area. Sometimes in side pods, they roll up into big lumps of rubber and then they fall off the car and roll across the road. So it's not actually chunks of rubber in slabs from the tire itself. I would say something has to happen fairly soon because it's running a little bit too copyright at the moment.
Estoril corner, 117 to 120 miles an hour, fourth gear, 3 Gs of lateral acceleration.
And 3.2 Gs of negative deceleration as they come down into Adelaide hairpin. He slips by the Sauber and actually goes through. I don't think he lost too much time there. Schumacher had a good draft or slipstream as he came down that straightaway. Disappointed in the Saubers this weekend. Johnny Herbert's always talking about how they don't handle well on a bumpy circuit. Well, they could have anything much smoother than this, and they just don't seem to have got the Sauber, remembering it has the Petronas or a Ferrari engine in there, hasn't actually been running at all well this weekend. It showed much better earlier in the year. Look at the way he puts it through that corner, the Imola corner, as he goes through there. Absolutely amazing. Beautiful undulations.
Still have a Jekyll and Hyde day in one direction, blue sky in the other, towering storm clouds over Manicourt, and there are shadows on the racetrack. We'll be back with more in a moment. Continues to threaten. All the cars still on slicks. There you see the cloud cover. Actually, a little rain might make things a little more interesting here. Right now, it is very processional. Michael Schumacher leads that man, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, his Ferrari teammate, Eddie Irvine. The bits of rubber continue to bounce as the Goodyear and Bridgestone tires shed their skins.
It was quite interesting just now. They had a close shot of Frenzen's car, and it did look as though he had on his left front tire quite a heavy black marking around it, as if he had some blistering, but I can't believe he did.
Magnussen back in again, and the mechanics are in no panic whatsoever. It appears the Dane is done for the day.
This is really sad for him. He needed some good results. He's had an awful year. They know the car is in its first season, but nonetheless, he just hasn't had the success, the luck that Barrichello has. Barrichello just has had the support, I think, more of the team behind him. Jackie and Paul Stewart have been very supportive of Jan, but at the end of the day, you have to turn up the results, and they must be wondering what they're going to do with him for next season, because his morale is down, and he really needs a good result, and today won't have put him anyway towards getting that morale back again.
The Saubers in the pits. The Stewart car is apparently quite good. They are down about 80 horsepower with that Ford V10 engine.
Oh dear.
They have the makings of a solid team. They're going to need 2 solid drivers to make any headway in Formula One. That was Norberto Fontana.
Look at how he's holding up the Ferrari. Oh, he didn't. He let him by. Or I shouldn't say let him. He just went by around the outside. Pretty bold move, in fact, on something just come out of the pits on warm tires, but fresh tires at that.
Approaching the halfway mark, Michael Schumacher has lapped up to 10th place. Giancarlo Fisichella has pitted at the halfway mark. There is Eddie Jordan. Fisico on a one-stop strategy. Last week, Eddie Jordan right there had a couple of his cars at the Goodwood Festival of Speed in England. Giancarlo Fisichella was going to drive one of them, but he seized the opportunity to go to Spa, Belgium, a track he had never been on, to drive a touring car in the Belgian Touring Car Championship just to get a look at the racetrack. Wound up finishing second.
It was actually quite funny last week at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. I said to Eddie, I said, why is it you didn't have Ralph Schumacher here driving up the hill? And he looked at me and said, you must be joking. Through those trees in the wet, no way. But he was very highly spirited. He had a great time. So did Gary Anderson. They loved it driving. I can't believe that Gary actually fitted into a Formula One car. He's quite a big boy.
And I loved his remark afterwards. Now we're going to have to get a separate test team for Eddie, because he's going to want to drive all the time. Saw some of the rubber flicking in the air as Michael Schumacher at the halfway point resets fast lap of the race. I don't know why Ralph wouldn't be there. Emerson Fittipaldi was there driving. Sterling Moss, Jim Hall.
Well, I have to say, Hans Stuck, driving his father's 1937 Auto Union. It's been totally restored in Britain. The car with twin rear wheels, and Stuckey actually wore his father's goggles. And there was a little moist eye from him when he sat in it for the first time, I must admit, when he fired it up. A V16 engine, you can't imagine it. It sounded and looked wonderful.
The pictures were amazing of Stuckey, all booted up in a silk driving suit, passing Goodwood House in the wet.
Not many people would have taken out an invaluable car like that in the wet, but only Stuckey's probably one of the few drivers that is capable of keeping it on the road.
We should also point out
Look at Schumacher's fastest lap, 1:17.9.
first time under 1:18 we've seen. I was saying we should point out you also drove at Goodwood last weekend.
Yeah, I drove a 333P, the Ferrari we raced, well, not the same Ferrari, but sister car to the one I raced at Daytona earlier in the year. Jonathan Palmer, he was there in last year's Williams Formula One car. He said how much quicker it seemed to be than the car from the year before. And of course,
Rubens Barrichello is in the gravel and appears he may have lost the engine. Lots of steam out the back.
And also Nick Heidfeld was there in the McLaren Mercedes. He did a great job too. Very, very trying conditions. But I think the outstanding thing was to see Jim Hall driving his wonderful car from back in the 70s. That was even before that, I guess. Early 70s. Even 60s, should I say. Unbelievable to see that car go uphill, driven by Jim himself.
The sucker car, as it was called, with a fan that held it to the racetrack. It was one of the earliest iterations of downforce exploitation.
It's interesting, everybody said, it's amazing, you put a helmet on Jim Hall, you put it on Sterling Moss, put them in the car, and they look the same age as they were when they were driving all those years ago. Their faces look younger. Anyway, back to what we have in front of us.
Both Stewart cars out of the race. Alex Wirtz sitting in for Gerhard Berger, who had a second operation on his troublesome sinuses to clear up an infection. Been on antibiotics for 6 weeks. Hopes to be back for the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, our next race. 6 drivers in all out of the race at this point.
Bert's doing a tremendous job, you know. I mean, amazing how young these guys are these days. They seem to have so much experience. It must mean the cars are very similar to the cars that they sort of get weaned on, as in Formula 3. And of course, we did mention earlier how Trulli said how his Prost was so similar to his F3 car, and I guess that is it. The technique is the same, although they do have 750 horsepower instead of 180.
You would know, he was in an F3 car last year. An amazing march up through the ranks in motorsport. Alex Wirtz also interesting in that he got his start on a BMX bicycle. He was a world champion in BMX bike racing before he turned to motorsport.
But Trulli has the most amazing record in karting. I mean, I've never seen anybody with a palmarès, as they say in French, of so many victories in karting through all the years that he's been racing. He won virtually everything. I've never seen anything like it. Remember, all these drivers, all the top drivers, have all come through karting to get up into Formula Ford, and then of course Formula 3 and so on.
Jarno Trulli may in fact be the most decorated kart racer in history. Johnny Herbert turned 33 on Friday, celebrating with a case of the flu. Johnny not at his best this weekend.
Yes, there's no way when you're under par to be out there in any sort of racing car. It really is awful. The tension, you can't believe how much pressure you put on yourself as a driver, only to find yourself out there in a race feeling very second-hand.
Flavio Briatore nodding his head. Pat Simons to the right, his technical director, watching the Benettons go around. It hasn't been good for them since this man left with 2 world championships. Fontana, in his Formula One debut, brought his Sauber into the pits. 3 mechanics lifted the front end off the ground to replace the nose, and the young Argentinian has stalled the engine. A disastrous pit stop and a hard lesson learned. From the land that gave the sport Juan Manuel Fangio, Roberto Fontana, who has been the test driver for the Sauber team, but he has not had a lot of laps. High overhead, the clouds still building, although no appreciable rain yet. As we're in the second half of this race, there's the story. Michael Schumacher, almost 22 seconds clear of the field with 1 pit stop, and at least 1 still to go.
Yes, he should be in any time at all, in fact. Oh, they're picking that car up, wheeling it right out of the way and have him around. Ralf Schumacher and David Coulthard having a real go there. And they of course have got Mr. Alexander Wirtz right behind them, so You've got quite an interesting dice going on here. What you've got to remember is look at how wide a line that Coulthard takes around that hairpin. There's a lot of turbulence in the fast corner, and one says, well, why don't they get closer so they can draft or slipstream down the straightaway into Adelaide Turn? The problem is they can't get down Estoril Corner with so much turbulence around the stern of the car, around the back of the car. It upsets the car so much they just can't keep their foot on it.
5th, 6th, 7th, and then this man, Jean Alesi in 8th. Damon Hill back in the pits.
This is actually probably his first official stop, isn't it, Bob?
He's already made one after damaging the wing on the first lap. A little trouble getting the fuel hose out.
Getting it into gear.
Damon shaking his head.
Push it, boys. Here he goes. He got a gear then. It's so frustrating when you got these paddle-type gears, or should I say the button-type gear. You just keep pressing it. Nothing like the old days. You had the old gear shift in your hand and said, come on, you beauty, you're going to go into gear. You push it into second, push it into third, back into second, back into first, and off you go. You're pressing a button, it seems like you just don't have contact with the gearbox.
And you can only press the pedal so hard. Whereas with a gear lever, at least you could jam away at it for a while, get a little psychological satisfaction. You see the running order. Fisichella after his one pit stop further back. Ferrari team.
Looked like he's putting his hand out to feel for moisture. Did you see that? Did you think that's what it was? That fella putting his hand out as if it was going to rain? I don't think he's saluting anybody.
Now we're getting reports from some of the corners that raindrops are beginning to fall. This could get very interesting. Recall a few years ago. There you see the crews heading for the pit lane. Are those grooved rain, perhaps intermediate rain tires? They have a selection here. Goodyear has 5 different compounds and constructions of treaded tires. Bridgestone has 6 for its teams.
See the marks? You saw the Jordan there. You could probably see, oh, here goes one of the Salvers. He's keeping his foot in it. It just shows how hard that stuff is. Oh, he had to come to a halt. That is a great
Fontana.
That's Fontana. Not a very good start for the poor guy. But he was actually sort of keeping it going rather well there for a bit. But you could actually see on the Jordan just now, you could see the dark patch on the tire as if it was starting to blister. I can't believe they're going to put intermediates unless it really has a downpour, because Schumacher will want to go out and get away as quick as he can.
A few years ago, Jean Alesi tried to brave the sprinkles on slick tires. Slick's there in the Ferrari pits.
Yeah, they're doing 1:17. So I heard that they can get, and once they get down to 1:27, that's the time that they actually have to come in and put wets on. They have that window down to 1:27, and then from then on, they have to come in and put wets on, or as the case may be, when they get as quick as 1:27, they can then go in and put the dries on.
Assuming you're not throwing it off the racetrack.
Well, that's true.
Eddie Irvine with a quick tire change.
Yeah, he's on the slicks. It'd be interesting to see. Michael may well want to stay out just that bit longer. They want to get Eddie's stop done so Michael can pick and choose when he comes in, unless he's on a very definite sort of running out of fuel situation. But I'm sure he has enough fuel to carry on just a little bit longer. So Michael is staying out, waiting for that moment that maybe the rain starts to come and he goes in and can combine a fuel stop along with putting on some wet or intermediate tires.
Pit lanes are so close, so dangerous.
These days, those pit crews have to be not done nearly as good as the drivers. The efficiency of those pits is all important. And we saw the way Schumacher comes in always so well, so fast, down to the speed limit, and then get in there and just rely on his men to do that immaculate pit stop. Again, you look at the sky there, Bob. There is black, but the other side isn't too bad. It just depends. Looks like a bit from that film Independence Day, that black cloud coming across.
Or the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Battle of Jordans and Benettons. 5th through 8th. Interestingly, both teams using new driver adjustable, electronically controlled differentials. We heard Gary Anderson earlier referring to the Jordan model. Gives the driver a little bit more control, able to adapt his car to the conditions on the racetrack as the race goes on. There you see the running order. Will we get rain here in France? Laps continue to tick away. We'll be back with more live from the Grand Prix of France from Manicourt. Back in France, moments ago, Michael Schumacher made his second pit stop. More important than the stop itself was what was going on at the back of the car, right there, as you see steam coming from the back.
Yeah, not a good sign. Whether it's steam or a little bit of it might be just the breather from the engine, who knows, but it certainly wasn't what you'd like to see at this stage of the race when you're in the lead of it.
As a result, Michael Schumacher returns to the track less than 2 seconds behind new race leader Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Williams Renault. Look at the rubber off to the driver's left.
You just do not want to go out right on those corners at all. I mean, you would be history, just like running on marbles. Well, we call it marbles, of course. Of course, Frentzen will be considering going in for his pit stop at any time at all. So Schumacher might have to be content with being behind him, but of course he would like to be in front of him and really get away.
The gap from Schumacher back to Jacques Villeneuve has been pretty much a non-factor, running 3rd and 4th throughout the race. He will not gain ground on Schumacher in the World Driving Championship if he does that. Notice the little contrails off the back of the rear wing. Very humid here in France. Rain is coming, although it's not here yet.
It's somewhere around there, that's for sure, up in them old clouds.
Williams team standing by, awaiting either Frentzen or Villeneuve. Frentzen pits from the race lead.
Just what Schumacher wanted. He didn't get held up by Frentzen. Of course, we all know Schumacher's opening few laps when he goes out fresh tyres with the quick ones, the ones that can really sort of put a stamp on the race.
Poetry in motion,
stop.
a Formula One pit stop, a good one at 8.1 seconds. Heinz-Harald Frentzen fully knowing that Michael Schumacher is flying up the road ahead of him, back into the race lead.
So he'll probably be some 20 seconds behind him right now, which is of course how they went in, 21-second lead. Michael had over him when he pitted.
New holder of the Silver Laurel Leaf during these highest honors for a sportsman. 24 laps to go in the 72-lap race. Schumacher looking for his 3rd win of the year and his 2nd straight.
And as we said earlier on the circuit, that he said that they wouldn't be able to do very well. So heaven knows what's going to happen when they get to a circuit that he feels they will go well on.
We're still seeing smoke, in fact more smoke or steam now from the back of Schumacher's Ferrari.
But not there. It's strange, Bob. There wasn't any just there, and that's where he backs off. It's generally on the backing off. When you lift off the throttle, you get back on it again. That's really where you see the smoke. You did notice in that corner, it seems at the entry to the very fast corners that he seems to get that slight puff of smoke or something.
Yukio Katayama back on the racetrack. His teammate for the weekend, Tarso Marquez, is out.
Oh, look at this group. They're having a real old dice. Alesi's caught up Wirtz now. He should do. It's about time he caught up, because these three in front are obviously out fumbling each other, and it's time that Alesi caught them up. Quite a group having a go there. But again, I think the Estoril corner is the deciding factor. They cannot get close enough to the car in front on the straightaway, and you can imagine the turbulence. Oh, look at Ralph getting quite oppy-loppy as he goes round there. Again, the cars behind doing exactly the same. Look,
and there is rain.
Looks like heavy spots of rain as well.
Well, it could quickly become an all-skate here in Manicourt. Raindrops on the camera lens.
This could really play a little bit into Villeneuve's hands, because he hasn't been in yet for his set of tyres and his refueling, and of course if the time was just right, he could go out on his intermediates, but they're not going actually slow enough yet to warrant it. As I said just now, it seems to be from the tyre companies that they have to be doing about 126, 127, 128. That's slow that they have to then come in and put the wet on.
Johnny Herbert through the Adelaide hairpin, 40-mile-an-hour corner, 2nd gear, slowest corner on the racetrack.
Can you imagine the chaos if it does tumble down with all the cars coming in for tyres in what looks like a very small pit road? Look at that rubber lying there. That is a great shot, as you said just now, Bob, but even more pronounced as you come down that straight with the telephoto lens. See, there's no smoke there, and that's where you would expect to see it. Again, there's something there, but it might just be the heat haze.
Dust off the racetrack as well. List of the cars out of the race. 15 cars, with the 22 starters still running.
While we're watching Michael Schumacher, I think we should talk about the fact they've been running. Michael's been out testing the 1998 spec tyres, Bob. They're the ones with the grooves, but we're better to talk about the Coulthard situation first. Fairly normal stop. But Michael went out testing the other day, in fact here at Manicourt, and he was like 5 seconds slower on the new groove tyres, which was suggested for 1998. And in fact, he said that the car braked just as well. In other words, the braking area, braking points were just the same, but of course once you turn in the corner, you don't have any grip whatsoever, and of course that is going to be the main problem.
No sign of any heavier rain.
Well, you see, out there right now, there's a number of cars, 15 laps on the track, 15 cars on the track. They are keeping the water away. If it's only sprinkling, you can see it on the lens of the camera. Villeneuve slid out a bit on that corner, but of course he is about to come in, so maybe his tyres are getting towards the end of their life. But of course, as long as you've got 15 cars going around, the tyres are very warm, and believe it or not, they're actually sort of sapping up the moisture as they go around. It's only when you get a torrential downpour, we can race in these conditions until there is actually quite a wet circuit and with a dry line. But the trouble is when you get offline and you catch that moisture off the road you go.
It's true. A tire at more than 200 degrees of operating temperature can dry a lot of racetrack. A lot of pit stops now. The Tyrrell team making one. This is the Benetton team for Alex Wirtz. Mika Salo in the other pit for Tyrrell.
Ooh,
dropped harshly.
He needs to get away better than that. Poor guy. He's got a problem obviously with his clutch. Oh, he didn't need that because he was doing such a good job. He's having a job getting those gears, fiddling with. Oh, there he goes. But of course, what he needed then was a brilliant pit stop to get ahead of Schumacher, but it didn't work out that way. Ralf Schumacher, that is.
Team examining tires, awaiting Jacques Villeneuve's second stop.
Look at Schumacher's times. He's still whipping in some very, very quick laps. It can't be that moist at this point. Look at the glow on those brakes as they come in there. Absolutely phenomenal. These carbon brakes absolutely glowing so hot as they storm into the corners.
Villeneuve pits.
Good stop, a great stop for Villeneuve. But unfortunately, he's 40 seconds behind Schumacher. So he won't really do him too much good. But of course, who knows, with damp conditions coming, who knows what the play would be.
Tail lights flashing on the safety car at the end of pit lane there. I didn't notice those on any of the earlier stops. No sign of anything afoot on the racetrack. Michael Schumacher remains dominant in France, looking for his third win of the year. We'll be back with more live from Manicourt in the Loire Valley in just a moment. Live in France, raindrops continuing to sprinkle down, but the rest of the top cars have pitted, including Ralf Schumacher and Jean Alesi, who were engaged in that four-car battle for fifth place, and they came back out on slick tires. Jarno Trulli, however, pitted his Prost, as you see the raindrops dripping on the tents. Trulli put on intermediate tires with slight shallow grooves in them. Then came back out and badly held up second-place runner Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Michael Schumacher, the race leader.
Hence the 28.3-second gap between he and Frentzen. That was enough to slow Frentzen down. It was an awful situation for him. I just don't think Trulli really knew he was there to start with.
Slick Bridgestone rubber going on Pedro Dinitz's car. Windshield wiper now ticking away on the safety car parked at pit out. 17 laps to go.
Don't make a mistake here. Don't get caught up in it. Oh, around the outside. Now he's got to get in as they go down onto the Adelaide Straight. Look at the way he's hogging the road, and he's going to put Michael in that dirt on the outside. Not good at all. Actually, I think he was trying to keep in, but it didn't help Michael too much.
Of course, all that rubber offline makes it difficult for lappers to get out of the way.
Yeah, and that's, of course, he did try, but there really wasn't that much room for Schumacher. Of course, you just need a bit of extra lurch because you're not usually out there. The car moves across. He's still doing 119s. and that's still good enough to say it's not too wet yet. You can see the moisture on the screen, or there on the camera lens, but it's still not enough. They need a lot more water to make this track undrivable on slicks.
Spark shower from the skid plates under Michael Schumacher's Ferrari.
Look at that sky there.
It's going to be a beautiful sunset
beautiful
tonight.
Sunset noir. That is the most amazing bit of color you've ever seen.
Brake discs glowing are pictures from French television. This was the battle as Jarno Trulli held up Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
Look how dark it is on this part of the circuit. Apparently the guys that got their dark lenses on their helmets are regretting they put them on. You see the moisture though coming up onto the lens of the camera on Michael's shoulder there.
Well, what must the driver think as he heads out on another lap, seeing this black curtain overhead?
Well, it's for Schumacher, he knows he's the king in the rain. So I don't suppose he's too bothered about it, because he thinks, give me some rain, boys, and I'll just drive away and get even more time on the others. But of course we know how good the Bridgestone tires. However, Barrichello isn't in there at the moment, so consequently he hasn't got to worry too much about that Bridgestone shod car.
Nearly 250 engine cylinder explosions per second as the Ferrari revs to about 17,000 under the foot of Michael Schumacher. We'll be back to France in a moment. And Jean Alesi with Alex Wirtz just behind in this battle. Amazing that the Austrian youngster is up there, considering that very slow pit stop he had. Rain continuing to fall over the Magny-Cours circuit.
But it's obviously not enough, Bob. They're still doing 119s, 120s. It's got to be a lot slower than that for these guys to go in and put on those intermediates or even the wets. So they're going to hang it out. They, in fact, probably wouldn't even come in and put intermediates on anyway. They'd come in when it was really wet and put on the wets, particularly at this stage of the race with so few laps to go. But look at that rubber. It looks like two different surfaces.
Would be one of the last to come in and put wet weather rubber on.
I don't think that's spray there. That's just a lot of dust on the track that goes up as the cars go through that turn. Trulli obviously suffering. He's falling back all the time in the Prost. Remember, he came in and put Bridgestone intermediates on for some unknown reason, which may well pan out well should it get wet. But he's certainly dropping back a lot at the moment, and it wouldn't be enough for him to. It wouldn't be enough for him to actually come in, or for the others to come in, put their wets on, and for Trulli to go through in the lead, because he's probably 45 seconds or more, or at least 45 to 50 seconds behind.
Certainly raining on this part of the circuit, which fortunately is quite slow.
That looks very dry right there. It doesn't look like there's any moisture on that bit of track. They can turn 1 lap 20s, which we understand they are, and they can get round the Estoril curve as well as that, and to abreast. What were they overtaking? Was that Trulli they were overtaking? I think it was Trulli on the intermediates. And so he's now a lap behind, not 45 seconds.
It gives you some idea of the difference between the slick tires and even the intermediates in terms of traction. Johnny Herbert barbecuing his good years.
I guess you think of all the people with this being the home track of the Prost team, that they'd have the old weather sussed out about right. They're the only ones being their sort of home circuit than the local French team, as they would have picked a better setup for poor old Trulli, who's staggering around in intermediates and being lapped by 6th, 7th and 8th place.
Maybe they hired the weatherman who told the Williams team in Monaco that the rain was going to stop 20 minutes into the race. Or rather, it was going to continue into the race, which is why they started on tires that would never get them anywhere near the front.
Well, this should be interesting, because they're going to batch up a little bit behind Ralf Schumacher now. If Ralf can't get by the Tyrrell in front, because he's got to follow it probably all the way down through as far as the exit of the Estoril curves onto the straightaway. Just because guys behind the opportunity to not know. Oh, Ralph's going through. To heck with it all. He's going through, so he didn't actually lose any time on it.
Ralph Schumacher continues to shine, but it has been, oh, it's very wet down there in the Adelaide hairpin. A dramatic twist. We'll be back. To go in the Grand Prix of France, and it is raining heavily around the Manicourt circuit. The clouds have opened, and that has put a whole new twist on this race. Michael Schumacher in the race lead, going slowly on slick tires.
Yes, he's taking it very gingerly right now. It was streaming down on the pit straightaway in the section following this, and down onto the pit straight. It was very, 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 very wet. It makes you wonder just how long they will stay out. In fact, the rain might have backed off a bit now. It's in a bit sideways there. Michael can afford to stay out a couple of laps. Really wet here. You think he might hear the wheel spin as he jerks it on as he comes out of the hairpin, the Lycée hairpin. They have the oil flag out, which indicates to the drivers that the track is very slippery through that section. Doesn't necessarily mean it's oil on the road. Now, Michael possibly will go out wide. Oh, he's on the dirt. He could be losing the race. Very wide indeed. Keep it on there, Michael. He did. He may well want to come in and put some intermediates on it this time.
When Michael Schumacher goes off, you know it is devilish out there. Now, his brother Ralph, running in 5th, has pitted. As we take another look at Michael, just overstepping the bounds of traction and having to take it out onto the gravel trap.
Yeah, I think he'll be coming in this time. What's Ralph gone out on? He's got to have gone out on intermediates. That's what he came in for.
You can see the rain continuing to fall. So the umbrellas in the grandstand that started the day as parasols are now parapluies, because the rain is pouring down in France.
Your French is brilliant, Bob. I just love it. Look at Michael going out wide. The reason you go out wide is the track will have more grip to it offline. Believe it or not where he was there. But we always drive around about 1 car width off the correct line, because the surface has not been driven on by the other cars. There might be rubber there, but there's a more abrasive surface underneath. And we go out there to try and get the grip. I'm sure he'll come in this lap and put some intermediates on. The trouble is he really got caught out there because it was very wet as he started his lap. We'll see now if he comes in. Is he coming in? We'll see just after as he comes through the chicane, as it's called. Yes, no, he's not. He's staying out. But of course, Michael can see the sky much better than we can. It might be very wet there, but around other parts of the track, it is probably not quite so wet. He knows now that he mustn't go out too wide going around the Estoril curve.
9 laps remaining in round 8 of the Formula One World Championship. A look further back. Ooh, Pedro Diniz.
He's had some spins today, he has. Is he going to keep it in there and keep plowing through the shingle? Oh no, I think he's going to be out of it after that one. He's not. What he might do. It just shows you. Look at it. Keep it. He's obviously should do some more off-road.
Well, of course, he brings a lot of that gravel back onto the racetrack as Michael Schumacher goes around Johnny Herbert, or does he? Oh, what a time for a duel.
Johnny Herbert goes around him. Of course, Johnny's obviously on an intermediate tire.
Hardly a fair fight, even when it's Michael Schumacher you're up against.
I'm surprised Michael didn't go in for those intermediates. But no doubt the pits are talking to him intermediate section by intermediate section, telling exactly what his pluses and minuses are. See, through here, it doesn't look nearly as wet as it does in other places. He's still going through the old Imola curve pretty quickly. This is where you have to be so smooth. You've got to have the car absolutely correct, absolutely online. You don't want to do too much throttle, overdo it. You've got to keep it absolutely smooth. And of course, he's coming down. Is he going to go in the pits this time after he slips through the chicane? We will have to see. What you don't need to do in the damp is touch one of those curves, because believe me, if you hit one of those curves, then of course it really shoots the car across the road. You can imagine out of the hairpin like that, out of the old Lycée turn, there's a lot more rubber there where the guys have been spinning the wheels. Therefore, it is much more slippery. See, he's done a 1:46. Yes, he could lose a lot of time in a very short space of time.
It's about 28 seconds slower than his fast lap of the race on dry tires. Jean Alesi in. The intermediates going on.
Really rain.
Now, when Alesi, who is the ultimate Labrador Retriever when it comes to running in the wet in Formula One, when he goes in for treaded tires, you better give it another thought.
Well, Schumacher, remember, he's concerned more about Villeneuve than anybody in this race, so he's going to wait and see what Villeneuve or Frenzen's doing behind him. So he's listening to his radio to hear what they do. If they come in, I've no doubt he would come in as well. As long as he can do 146 and they're doing 146, he's absolutely fine. But it is certainly tipping it down right now. It could be time for him to come in very shortly, because if it's wet everywhere like this, it's a good chance to come in, whip those tires on and have a go.
A 30-second lead over second place Hans-Harald Frentzen is what Michael Schumacher has to work with.
Which is as much as he's had the whole race. Earlier on, he had 28.5 seconds over him, so Frentzen isn't making any time up. Remember, Frentzen and Villeneuve do not want to go off the road. Michael does not want to go off the road, so they're going to drive very, very tentatively until they see one of them makes a break and goes for the pit. See, goes right round the outside of the corner there to get as much grip as he possibly can. Has to tuck in on the apex ultimately. Tries to take as wide a line as he can.
You can almost see the smiles under the balaclavas on the Williams crew. It'll be interesting to see how Jean Alesi proceeds through the 5 cars ahead of him now that he is on treaded tires.
Remember, he'd have lost something like probably 15 to 20 seconds, and he was like virtually a minute behind. So he's got a lot of time to make up with what, only 7 laps remaining. If he makes up 10 seconds a lap, which he probably could do, it's still a bit of a gamble. Oh, is Ralph having a terrible time?
And more debris brought onto the racetrack. Ralf Schumacher.
But he just shows you that those shingle beds aren't really doing their job, because at most tracks they would have been bogged down when they went out onto that shingle, and that's really what it's there for.
Not a battle for position.
But that's Trulli coming up behind, about to unlap himself where he was lapped earlier. Remember, Trulli came in very early on.
And remember that he held up Heinz-Harald Frentzen very badly when he came out on those treaded tires, so Frentzen may be in no mood whatsoever to let Trulli go by.
But didn't have much option at the end of the day. The crowd cheering as the French car goes through and gains the place, albeit 10th, but he's got himself back onto the same lap as Frentzen, but of course a long way behind the leader still.
French Racing Blue. Color of the old Bugattis. Giancarlo Fisichella in the Jordan pits for treaded rubber.
Yeah, that's that. That looked like a real good wet tire that he had on there, didn't it, Bob? Well, this is interesting. There's Coulthard. Was that Coulthard? Who's that? Eddie they went by then? I couldn't see his helmet.
Not sure, but boy, has Fisichella ever got the bit between his teeth. And as David Coulthard, battling with Ralf Schumacher over 5th place. Williams team, go to the back, find the treaded stuff. We need it now. That is Michael Schumacher, I believe.
Coulthard going around the inside because the line became a little bit drier there. He hasn't been in yet to put any intermediates on, I don't believe. At least we didn't see him pit.
There's intermediate rubber. If that were full wet, the rubber blocks on the tires. The tread would be much deeper.
No, it does look like Coulthard has been in. You can see the white markings on the tires, which would have gone by now.
About a 10-second per lap gap, roughly, between what the slick-tired cars are doing and what the treaded tires are doing.
Well, Ferrari are ready, but they've heard that Williams are coming in with maybe Frentzen or Villeneuve. So, of course, as they said just now, they're all going to do what the other one does.
Fisichella in 9th. I can't believe that Fisichella hasn't been able to do more with those treaded tires.
But it looked like Coulthard's got something on it. It looks like he's got a white line around the middle of his tires, which means he did come in, but we didn't see it. You know what I'm saying, Bob?
Otherwise, he's doing a remarkable job of car control in the conditions.
Yeah. See the white line? Oh, he can't in that shot. If any way he could be on a slick tire with the other two guys behind him on wets.
John Alesi now back in 7th. Johnny Herbert 8th. Fisichella, as we saw, in 9th.
You can see the white lines around the middle of Coulthard's tires. That has to be he's on a wet.
Eddie Irvine. There's the Williams pit. This is Jacques Villeneuve. Good quick Ferrari stop. 6.1. Of course, no fuel being added at this point. 7.5 for Villeneuve. He lost ground there.
Get out front of this lot. No, he's not. He's going to get stuck behind 4th, 5th and 6th places, isn't he? But he's got to work his way through them.
If he can.
If he can. Oh, look at the other. He's going to get overtaken there by Fisichella, who's all over the back of him and out wide too. It takes you just a few seconds to settle into just to how much traction, how much grip your wet tyres have got. He's not getting by yet, but I think he may well as they come down to the Adelaide hairpin. No, he's blocking him out. Boy, is he blocking him out. Fisichella's out wide. No, it doesn't have any benefit there.
4 laps remaining in the race. And Michael Schumacher, the race leader, remains on slick tires in these wet conditions.
Remember that Frenzen is still out there too, and he's on slicks. Villeneuve didn't have much to lose. There's still a substantial gap, 37 seconds between Schumacher and Frenzen. That's Michael Schumacher and Frenzen. So consequently, Michael isn't about to come in as long as that gap's maintained. And of course, the others have come in, but at the same time, they lost a good 20 seconds in their pit stop. Villeneuve is certainly holding up that little group there.
2 great racing teams, each looking for their 100th career victories. Roger Penske's team in the PPG Kart World Series and Frank Williams' crew in Formula One. Each team has been stymied in their recent efforts to get to the century mark. Fabio Briatore on the left. Pat Simons on the right. Skies appear to be lightning directly over the racetrack, although as you can see, over the hills in the distance, still raining heavily.
There's not much spray coming down there. Look how Alesi comes up on Villeneuve. The story wasn't quite correct just now. You see on the screen it said Villeneuve was 4th and Alesi was 7th, but in fact it's Villeneuve 4th and Alesi 5th, I believe I'm right in saying. Only 3 laps to go, and Schumacher and Frenzen are still hammering out. Oh, he had a look down the inside. We've seen Alesi having some of these pretty desperate moves before. Alesi needs a good result because Alexander Wirtz has done an excellent job today. Alesi needs to somehow get in there, and he's not going to get a podium finish at this rate, but certainly needs to get in and get a good result out of it.
Boy, it is raining hard somewhere.
Yeah, look at it there. Oh, because he went out wide, I think, and picked up the white line where there's a lot of spray. You've got to remember that Goodyear, in fact, bought 5 different wet tyres here this weekend, and Bridgestone brought 6 different types of wet tyre as well. So it's not just a battle between a wet and a wet, it's between which wet and which wet. And of course, we have no idea with knowing which just compounds they have on. The reason we talk about this, they have a different type of rubber. If it's really wet, they have a deep groove tyre, and as it gets drier, the grooves get smaller, and at the same time, the rubber probably gets a little bit harder. But with the very wide grooves, they have a much softer rubber, generally speaking, so that it warms up. The little bits of rubber they have on the road gets warm and gets tremendous traction.
2 laps to go. Jean Alesi battles with his Benetton. The team that Michael Schumacher took to a pair of drivers and 1 constructors championship before leaving. The times have been hard for Benetton since then. It's cost them a lot of money. Their sponsor contracts are performance related, and lacking victories, they lose a lot. David Coulthard in the McLaren.
course, is catching up on Ralf Schumacher, hand over fist there. I think Schumacher got a little bit too sideways coming through the corner, a little bit too side. Villeneuve's going to go through, and of course, that'll give him the opportunity to pick up an extra point or so, because it's put him up into 5th place, I think I'm right in saying. And of course, Villeneuve needs every point he can get at this point.
Good point.
Good point, though. I should have said at this juncture. You wouldn't be able to say anything then, would you?
There's always something. So both Ferraris and both Williams cars in the top 6, the points-paying positions. Whoops. Oh yes, Michael Schumacher still leads with 1 lap to go.
31 seconds, and the track is drier than it was, certainly through this section. The rain actually seems to have moved across the circuit.
Well, once again, the German has called it right.
Oh, look at them all going by Coulthard. Look at the shambles going on here. So Villeneuve's back up to 4th place, just what he needed. A real exciting bit of driving by him, and Schumacher both go by David Coulthard. I think I'm right in saying that. It looks certainly like it's a heck of a argy-bargy going on.
Slewing sideways.
Of course, that's put... Oh, and he's gone off Schumacher. I don't believe it. Schumacher, having done, Ralf that is, having done such a great job today. Just thinking what a super job. He's driven a very sort of serious race. He's kept it out of trouble, and then he has that moment on the shingle. But nevertheless, he's lost a couple of positions, but I think he will be able to go home to Eddie and say, I did finish though, Eddie.
Yes. That puts David Coulthard back up into 5th. And I believe moves John Alesi into 6th, but nevertheless, no question about the race leader as he goes by his brother Ralf.
No, I threw Fisichella, I think I'm right in saying. Yes, sorry about that, Bob. But
Michael Schumacher heads for the checkered flag for his 3rd victory, and he has been absolutely, now this time he lets the Jordan through, and that's not a position. It matters not to Michael Schumacher, who has what he wanted, a perfectly measured drive under horrible conditions, stays on slicks, and wins the Grand Prix of France.
Yeah, astonishing bit of driving in those conditions. Schumacher going around the inside of Alesi. Oh, my, well, they're having a mighty time.
And then that's Coulthard and Alesi for 6th place.
Leaning on each other as they go through the hairpin. They're having a real old go there, because remember, there's a point at stake in this. And of course, Alesi is lying, what, 4th in the championship or 5th? Coulthard was well up there as well. They need every point they can get.
5th and 6th are Coulthard and Alesi.
Eddie Irvine there, and he's got the attentions of Villeneuve. Now, Villeneuve would dearly love to get by Eddie Irvine and get another spot. Villeneuve is absolutely flying at this point, and Eddie, of course, has got to keep him behind him. Oh, no, I don't believe it.
Coulthard is off in the McLaren, and the points-paying positions are jumbled again as Alesi moves into 5th.
Come on, Eddie, you mustn't look at Villeneuve trying to go down the inside.
Oh, and Villeneuve throws it away!
The pit wall. Unbelievable, but he hasn't lost it. He's kept it going. He's got to spin it round to get across that line. Eddie's only just getting there. Looks like he might have had something wrong.
Will Villeneuve hold off Alesi? It appears he will, with damage to his race car. What a finish! Oh, my. James Robinson up there with arms folded. Patrick Head takes the headset off. What a day in France. We'll be back. Triumphant for the 3rd time this year, all because of that man, the unmistakable genius of Michael Schumacher. This was Schumacher coming to the checkered flag, having let Giancarlo Fisichella go by in the last corner. Over to the pit wall to salute his mechanics. Behind him, chaos was breaking out as Schumacher was followed to the finish line 30 seconds or so later by Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Williams. As you see the Constructors' Championship points on the World Feed graphics, Schumacher adds 10 more points to his World Championship lead, and suddenly he is looking like a very good bet for his 3rd World Championship. A look at the results. Schumacher, Frentzen in 2nd, 23 seconds behind. Eddie Irvine in 3rd. Jacques Villeneuve, despite a spin in the final corner, managed to salvage 4th. Jean Alesi 5th, and Ralf Schumacher 6th. 12 cars classified at the finish, the last of them ironically being the defending champion in this race and the defending World Drivers' Champion, Damon Hill, 3 laps behind in his Arrows Yamaha.
of the race there. The crowd is being waved.
So the Ferrari team that kept saying wait till next year before we can challenge for the World Championship suddenly looks like they could sweep both titles, but we still have a long way to go. This is Villeneuve attempting to overtake Eddie Irvine for third place in the final corner, and this could have been a complete disaster. As it was, he was able to get turned around once again and salvage fourth place, but only just from Jean Alesi, who pressed him right to the line. What an amazing finish as French coverage replays Villeneuve's harrowing moment.
He was extremely lucky. He was so lucky that he didn't actually pick up speed on that curb, because they're normally, when they got water on, they're so slippy. But being wet tires, he really slowed down. Look how he stops.
Oh, and look how he had chewed up those intermediates in the latter stages of this race as the rain stopped and the track dried out.
Oh, he was very lucky there to finish it all.
Well, we'll all take a deep breath as the top three make their way to the podium for the presentations. An amazing day here in France. Round 8 of 17 in the 1997 Formula One World Championship. The prancing horse proudly waves once again. See the team gathering at the base of the podium, hoping to be sprayed with champagne. Eddie Irvine was right. Michael Schumacher is worth every penny. Jean Todt looking down into the corner, I suspect either at his man Michael Schumacher winning or his man Eddie Irvine taking third place.
There's Ross Brawn, of course, who came, if I may say so, who came hugging there. Ross Brawn, who came from Benetton. What a thing was that for Michael to have him there. He's really straightened the team out a lot since he's been there.
In an interview last week in the British enthusiast magazine Autosport, Ross Brawn was quoted as saying, "Now we have a problem. We could have just thrown it all away and worked on next year's car, but we have a shot at the World Championship. We must divide our resources to win this title and work on next year's car." The German national anthem plays in honor of winner Michael Schumacher. He is the man. France, these were scenes from the early moments of this race as the field of 22 made its way to the grid under sunny skies. Here's a look at the unofficial results of today's race. Michael Schumacher picks up his third victory of the year. Heinz-Harald Frentzen finishes where he started, second place to Schumacher. Eddie Irvine picks up third place for Ferrari. David Coulthard, who went off the racetrack on the closing laps, falling out of the points for the second straight race, his second straight seventh place finish. The Scotsman will be tearing his hair down. There you see the cars down in Parc Fermé where they will be inspected. Meanwhile, our top three finishers are making their way to the interview room. We hope to hear from them shortly. After an amazing day, we apologize if due to technical circumstances our race call was a bit more confusing than it might otherwise have been. But with intermittent showers and a lot of shuffling going on, it has been an amazing race. Not quite halfway through the 1997 season. This is round 8 of 17. Race 9 will be in Britain. There's the Drivers' Championship, a 14-point lead for Michael Schumacher. More than one race worth of points. Jacques Villeneuve truly has his work cut out for him if he is to win the World Championship this year, despite the fact that Heinz-Harald Frentzen is in third place for the Williams team with 19 points. Looks like the second half could well be a two-horse race.
Congratulations
now
on
let's
your
hear from our
this
top
season,
finishers.
Which takes your personal tally to 25 victories. Seemed to be a pretty convincing win for you today.
Yeah, obviously it was a very surprising one. Obviously my prediction was totally wrong before this weekend, but apparently you can't. Huh? Yeah, true. But obviously I take it as it is. Pole and victory. I'm sorry. Pole and victory, that's the best you can do, and the way we have done, no mistakes, neither in setup nor in strategy. So it's just a perfect way of winning the race.
Tell us about your pit stop strategy, because you were one of the few that seemed to stick to your original plan all the way through.
Yeah, we were on the two-stopper, and we stick to this. Obviously, from my situation, I had to look what was Heinz Harald doing, whether he was going for a tyre change or not, and I had to stay out as long as possible, which was fairly difficult. I had a moment getting into the first corner, getting into the gravel, and I thought, oops, whether I get out of this again. But obviously it worked, and since then I was able to control the race.
Michael, well done. Heinz Harald, your second.
We'll take a timeout and we'll be back with more from France. Wrapping up the Grand Prix of France, an amazing day at Manicourt. Stay with us. To France, when Michael Schumacher goes off the racetrack, you know it's a difficult and challenging day for all of the drivers of the Formula One World Championship. Here's a look at our top 6. Michael Schumacher with his 3rd win of the year, beating Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Eddie Irvine. Jacques Villeneuve, Jean Alesi, and Ralf Schumacher round out the top 6. Thoughts about the upcoming British Grand Prix, Derek Bell?
Well, one has to agree with Michael. Very similar track to Manicourt, and I think he's got a great opportunity along with Eddie to get a great result.
Be sure to join us in a couple of weeks' time for the British Grand Prix. I'm Bob Varsha for Derek Bell. Thanks for being with us. So long, everyone.